I don't hear enough people talk about inFAMOUS regularly enough for me to say that it's a well-remembered game, so I decided we're going to talk about it today and how they did a lot right, but also did so much wrong with it and its sequels. Especially you, Second Son. So to get into things, inFAMOUS was developed by Sucker Punch Studios, the same guys behind the Sly Cooper games, Rocket, Robot on Wheels, and funnily enough, Ghost of Tsushima. So they're doing fine and dandy, even with their main squeeze, Sly Cooper, having been stolen off like a protester on the streets of... Whoa, how'd that get in my script? Anyways, the first game stars Cole, Gravel's my favorite cereal, McGrath, this bald-headed buzzcut douche in the pompous jacket, as he wakes up in the smack middle of a fucking atomic bomb crater, charred and mangled after opening a backpack with an item called the Ray Sphere inside of it, but somehow is alive and well. After getting the hell out of Dodge from Ground Zero and dropping like a man who is just in the middle of an explosion, Cole wakes up in a hospital to find that he has acquired electricity-based powers. And along with that, the entirety of Empire City is now fenced in, and nobody is allowed to leave because a super deadly virus is afflicting most of its citizens. Huh. So Kojima isn't the only one who can predict the future. Good to know. Supplies become scarce, and as a person with superpowers, Cole is looked to as someone the city must either rely on or die under the heel of. This game features a black and white karma system, much like the Fallout games, where each action you take can either be good, evil, or neutral. Cole will often have moments of introspection before each major decision, and a friendly icon will appear to remind the player that they can choose to be selfish and let others suffer for their gain, or take the harder path but help people in the process. Cole's gotta deal with drug dealers becoming a murder cult, weaponized hobos, and the Illuminati in the process, though. And on top of that, fun mid-2000s District Liberation mission gameplay, you gotta deal with the conduits that each faction has. What? Thought you were special? Well, you are, but not as much as you'd like to think. The game's cutscenes are done in a stylish comic book art style, with the occasional in-game cutscene playing out where we see that the lip-sync technology was still on par with Sly 3. Janky jaw-flapping and stuttering movement are abound. When they use the comic book cutscenes, though, you can feel the artist's attention to detail and framing, almost like they hired an actual professional comic illustrator to handle these parts. And unfortunately for both them and I can't find the credit for who worked on them, so we can chalk that up to another artist not given the proper fucking credit. What's even worse is the way that the game handles itself, in that if you're good or evil, Zeke, your best buddy and big-time Elvis Presley impersonator, yes, that's a joke, stick around, decides you're either too goody-goody or too much of a loose cannon and ditches your ass to join Kessler, the guy running the Illuminati, or First Sons, as they're called in this game, and gets his hands on the ball of death that gave Cole the same power I get when I jam the cord of a boombox into an outlet incorrectly in the 4th grade. Surprise for Zeke, it doesn't work, and he ends up having to apologize on verbal, hand, and knee to Cole for being a greedy bitch willing to wipe out tons of people for power. inFAMOUS 1, along with having an identity crisis for how the characters behave, also has a habit of fully ditching the characters until the 1 or 2 times that they're actually useful to Cole. Trish, Cole's recent ex and an EMT nurse, is all fucking around trying to save everyone she can in the city, and Zeke is sitting on a roof scratching his balls. What a cool dude that Cole made the right choice in being friends with. Also, there's this guy called the Voice of Survival you see all of, 5 times in the game max, talking about how the government is evil and how Cole is a big stinky jerkface whose powers are to be avoided at all cost. Also John White, who's effectively this game's white rabbit to chase, and also only shows up 5 times max in the game like the Voice of Survival. John gets nuked out of existence by you activating the ray sphere that Zeke stole, or it activates on its own and John still gets to feel each of his atoms vaporize, but more on that later. Along with your zappy hands, each faction in this game, except the police, is led by a conduit and has a couple minor conduits, which is the cute little nickname they gave to people with superpowers in this game. Anyway, each faction's conduit is a former part of the First Sons, as it turns out, until Kessler fucked them over and ruined their lives with his ruling of the group. Sasha, a former researcher, leads the Reapers with her hypno-sledge. Alder was a child prodigy Kessler ran out of the group who now runs the Dustmen with sheer numbers and power. And Kessler is a mustache-twirling fop who likes to call him a loser regularly to piss him off. What's even better is the big reveal that Kessler is the guy who kills your girlfriend, helps your best friend turn on you in a greedy power grab, and effectively screws over the entire city is you. That's right, the big reveal at the end is that Kessler was Cole all along. from a future where some big monster called the Beast walks around and causes absolute destruction for any who are unfortunate enough to be in his way. The icing on the cake is, if you pick the bad ending, Cole could not give less of a shit and he's now the one calling the shots in Empire City, and doing whatever he wants. Except, this ending isn't canon in the slightest, because if you have inFAMOUS data on your PS3 and you pick the evil options, inFAMOUS 2 smacks you on the nose and calls you a bad boy. But also gives you extra opportunities for bad karma, so thanks, I guess? Some more minor nitpicks about inFAMOUS before we move on to its superior. Cole can effectively never die from damage so long as you have metal in the vicinity, because your basic shots take no energy, so you can zap, heal, and become your own feedback loop. This makes the fear and scrambling to find energy sources much less daunting because you can cheese the environment and power up most anywhere, even in districts with the power turned off. That and the photon blades power that you can get as free DLC. This shit is terrible. You waste electricity to make your hands lightsabers and effectively one-shot most enemies. But the thing is such a power sink that spamming your melee button is just as effective and conserves power for things that you'll actually need. Anyway, enough whining about this game. On to its sequel. Back with a new VA, a new outfit, and new motivations, Cole is fucking off out of Empire City towards New Orleans. Oh, for fuck's sake. New Murray, to find some more members of the First Sons because the Beast is set in Cole's mind as a big bad force of evil he has to prepare to fight. Unfortunately for him, the Beast gets tired of waiting and pops up on the docks as Cole, Zeke, and his new team member, Lucy Quo, an NSA agent with ties to the First Sons, are all about to set sail for New Orleans. Cole gets his ass royally destroyed by the Beast and almost dies, falling into water which, being like a living bolt of lightning, is the toaster in the bathtub for Cole. Zeke saves him and the gang fucks off and watches as Empire City is pretty much destroyed on the spot. In the time it takes for them to get to New Murray, Zeke makes Cole a new toy, which is like an electro bat called the Amp, and it's Cole's melee weapon of choice in this game, with a combo finisher meter and everything. Knowing what he has to do, he begins absorbing blast cores to power a device called the Ray Field Inhibitor, left to him by a scientist of the First Sons, Dr. Wolf. Okay, now, I forgot to cover these in inFAMOUS 1, so I'll do it here, since they actually have more relevance. Blast shards were collectibles that extended your power meter and made it so you had more energy to do cool shit that you climbed all over Empire City for. And the same goes for New Murray because Dr. Wolf did some work and made blast shards happen again and scatter all over the city. A convenience, but a welcome one. But now there's also blast cores, which are bigger and badder and give Cole new powers, as well as being more condensed and potent chunks of irradiated Earth from the Ray Sphere's explosion. Cole has to collect these for story beats and to finish powering the Ray Field Inhibitor that's supposed to be the kiss of death for the Beast and save the day. On their arrival in New Murray, Cole also learns it isn't Mardi Gras and puts his beads away before realizing that there's a militia full of gun-toting hicks patrolling the city, acting as the main antagonizing force for the game, led by a man named Bertrand who sounds like Foghorn Leghorn after too many rallies on All Lives Mattering. Cole learns mutants are crawling out of the bayou surrounding Fuck it, it's New Orleans. I am justified in this, and we'll get to why that is in Second Son. But bear the fuck with me, and we're just calling it New Orleans, okay? Okay. Anyways, mutants, bayou. Oh, and the militia hates Cole, thinking he is on their side for some reason, calling him the Demon of Empire City. Cole tries to get Wolf out of the militia's greasy hands and into safer custody to work on the Ray Field Inhibitor, or RFI for short. And Cole meets this red-haired girl named Nyx, who's a conduit as well with oil and fire-based abilities, charring up militia rallies and living in the bayou with its mutants, acting as a mutants' right kind of activist. She's also color-coded to the karmic balance she gives you in that you're evil if you help her fuck around and do whatever you want. And on the opposite end, we have Agent Quo, who it turns out is a conduit with latent powers after Bertrand and the militia kidnap her and experiment on her, and make her into a big frosty battery for the legions and legions of dormant South African super soldiers Bertrand just keeps in the basement laboratory of his for shits, giggles, and security precautions. Cole and Co. rescue Quo as she comes to grips with her frosted tips as she can now act as a snow cone dispensary for the gang. Cole also makes friends with the citizens of New Orleans and learns the truth behind all of the mutants. Their Bertrand's handiwork as the man himself is a conduit whose power is turning into a giant fuck-off kaiju bug monster. Cole fucks around and does his best impression of the first game and liberates districts until the Beast pops up in New Orleans except in a different shape. The Beast now shows up as a super scarred and looking worse for wear, but wearing for better, John White, the guy you killed on accident in the first game. Turns out the race fear worked and was your own undoing in making the Beast, so Cole couldn't stop the Beast in his timeline at all. Good job, Kessler, you concave skulled nitwit. It turns out John is liberating conduits by activating their dormant powers, as the plague from the first game is back with a vengeance, because nobody in New Orleans wore their fucking masks and practiced social distancing, so now they're all suffering. It turns out conduits can't catch the plague, so they're fine and don't need to fear, so John is going Magneto and amassing a conduit army to keep the human race alive, and let the infected ones die off. Good ending Cole says, John, what the fuck? And bad ending Cole says, John, what the fuck? I wanna be the one with the cool powers doing the evil thing. So the game decides, okay, Hotshot, do you want to join the Beast or do you want to do your fucking job? Especially because Zeke is one of the few people who forgot to wash his hands for 20 seconds after touching a shopping cart, so he's on death's doorstep. The big twist of the karmic selection at the end is whichever side you pick, the opposite paradigm character joins you, making it so that Nyx was good all along and Quo's the selfish coward who would let people die if it means that she gets to survive. And here's where Infamous 2 actually makes me fucking tear up a little. Cole isn't only picking a vastly different ending and final sequence, he's picking to spare or abandon Zeke, who admittedly got his shit together and became a force of good in the sequel, even being a malicious spy and informant for Cole and crew, proving he's useful even without powers like they have. Which is why it hurts all the more when you pick the evil ending and have to personally execute Zeke as he weakly raises his gun, knowing fully well he can't stop you but wants you to try and see the error of your ways in the 13th hour. You don't, and you kill him if you pick the evil route, and John wusses out at being the Beast and just gives Cole admin privileges on the Discord instead, leaving the server and making it so Cole has to go around the world activating conduits. However, if you pick the good ending because you're not a selfish dickhead, you sacrifice yourself and every living conduit on the planet to kill John and save the world. Zeke gives you a proper burial and it ends on a somber yet uplifting note that Cole did right by the entire world, wiping out the Beast and curing the plague in one fell swoop. This game greatly expands on Cole's powers in a natural progression from the first game, and gives us more characters to give even the tiniest fuck about, so it gets points there. It also had user-generated content missions that might not be canon, but some fun ones were definitely sprinkled into the mix of bare-bones silly side missions people made. We also have more natural in-game cutscenes for more poignant moments, with the comic cutscenes mostly serving as flashbacks and cutscenes too intricate for the game to show off. This works well because it shows the game is more confident in its own engine, but hasn't forgotten what gave it its charm. Infamous 2 did a lot more right, but it still had its own nitpicks of pacing, loose ends of stories, and the karma system being obnoxious in extreme good or extreme dickheadery. Cole's evil in Infamous 1 felt more deliberately sinister and cruel, whereas in Infamous 2 it feels more mischievous and mean-spirited, with the extra actions you can take being to do things like smack a blast shard out of a person's hands, attack protesters like you have a blue stripe up your ass, or bully a drum circle. Just much more childish actions than the evil decisions of the previous game. I honestly would have loved to see the game pull some surprise shit and let you keep a more balanced gameplay and get its own line of powers. But I digress. The good and evil options are here to stay, except those childishly evil actions and extremely altruistic actions don't even compare to the karmic actions of Infamous Second Son. And by that I mean they deserve praise and consequence, while Second Son deserves to be smacked upside the head. Dear God, what a fucking mess. Also, don't think I was gonna ignore Festival of Blood. Let me check my notes. Infamous 2, but vampires and blood meter. Okay, that does it for that. On to Second Son. As much as I wish I didn't have to talk about it, but this retrospective would be pretty disappointing if I didn't talk about the worst game in the series. Now wouldn't it? Okay, so, Second Son does a lot right at the start, but immediately loses all tension and sense of doing right. Second Son stars Delson Rowe, a Native American street artist living in the inFAMOUS Reservation in Washington State. Represent! His brother Reggie is a sheriff of the county and does his best to uphold the law and keep everyone safe. This goes wrong in minutes as a prison bus full of criminals crashes into the reservation and the warehouse Delson snuck through at the start of the game is immediately set on fire by a suspicious escaped convict. Delson grabs the man and discovers he stole his powers as the man is a conduit with smoke and ignition powers. Suspicious how there's conduits despite the ending of the second game canonically being the good ending, but Second Son is a game I'd like to write off entirely, so we'll just put another drop in this overflowing bucket. Delsin gets back outside to find the reservation is being accosted by the most Karen-ass villain I've ever seen, who gives us the expository information that conduits are now called bioterrorists because they're ooky spooky and altogether kooky. And the villain who is so forgettable, we'll call her Karen of the streets because her power is concrete and her opinion has to be right 100% of the time in her opinion. She impales and concretifies the entire reservation, and, unless Delsin shakes her hand or smacks her in the face and takes her power, the entire Retrospective tribe is pretty much extinct. At this point, Delsin and his brother Reggie decide to head to Seattle to stop Christine Columbus, the concrete jungle's worst, and this is what I was talking about. Remember how I gave up on the naming convention of New Marais and Empire City? That's because they drop all pretense with Seattle, because what the fuck are you gonna call this shit? Port City? Hell, the trailers all were immediately breaking their ribs in the act of bending over and giving themselves a congratulatory self-sucking session because they made Delsin do a trick off the Space Needle. Fuck you, game. Anyway, on to the gameplay. Despite having never seen blast shards or blast cores, Delsin immediately knows what the fuck they are and gets to collecting them and powering himself up so he can smoke up the city obnoxiously like a bar and grill in 2004. What's even better is Delsin has all the moral complexity of an episode of Ed and Eddie where he'd relentlessly scam everyone around him in pursuit of a jawbreaker. And the few moral decisions we get with Delsin aren't even that fucking good. You can even tell what ending of the game wants the player to take as you get to the nerd with video powers. Oh yes, we'll get to how fucking dumb the powers are, fret not. Despite good or evil options, Delsin talks about having a holy paladin sword and a legion of angels at his disposal. Meanwhile, Delsin Rowe, with a side of evil and fries, has a demon claw and a legion of devils at his beck and call. And it's corners like this being cut that show how poorly planned this sequel was. On fucking top of all of that, Delsin doesn't even do anything really to get back at Karen for putting a death timer on the entire tribe of Native Americans that is his family, other than smack up some nondescript guys with concrete guns and spray paint a few privately owned walls and fences in downtown. Mind you, credit to the artists who did the spray paint designs and the neat little way you could hold your controller like a spray can, but simultaneously you can tell this is where the game's focus went. With the HUD having a spray paint element and Delsin's whole personality being printable on the spray can label, and his behavior being that of a kid who played Jet Set Radio once and said, "Yeah, fight the man!" And moving on to the karmic balance system, Delsin has his powers locked behind moral choice as well. Except the game doesn't have anywhere near as many moral choices, and in fact has them now locked to binary missions you get once in a blue corn fucking moon of do the right thing, or do the worst thing. And the benefits of each karmic alignment are marginal at best, with either do 3 shots at once or run longer with the neon jog. Other than that, nothing changes for Delsin as a person. He's a snarky schlub no matter what and is genuinely insufferable until the last hurrah of the game. So throughout the game, Delsin finds the 3 convicts who escaped at the start of the game, the only one whose name I remembered being Hank because his power is smoke and Hank will beat his ass for not being propane powered. And along with that, Hank will always backstab Delsin when they team up. Always. The other 2 we will refer to as Girl and Nerd because those are the archetypes they fill out on this game's AAA checklist. Girl is a junkie whose brother died and she wants to get better, so Delsin can pick to either help her learn to do good and overcome her addiction, or murder her drug dealer in cold blood and have sex to celebrate his death. I'm not even kidding. They actually celebrate by screwing after murder. That's how tone-deaf this game is. Then you have Nerd, whose powers he plays not World of Warcraft and has a crush on Girl. Delsin constantly takes advantage of his naivete and makes him think he's doing right when he's doing wrong usually, and for Delsin's own gain. Delsin gets a rip-off version of each person's power that he can swap between at any time by absorbing the proper element and having a go at it. And each power is uniquely bland. Neon is a laser pointer, Smoke is a shotgun blast of damage at a short range, and Video is a Gatling gun of weak damage output, but the best mobility with the ability to fly and launch out of satellite dishes. So fuck the other 2 powers, go for Video at all costs. There's also the post-game power of Concrete, and if you take time to actually level up the Concrete power post-game, I'm sorry your life is that uneventful, you're just a big burly juggernaut with saw blades. And a story. Speaking of story, the game has next to none. You fuck around Seattle, team up with Hank to storm Karen's ivory concrete tower in the middle of Puget Sound, and he betrays you. Shock and awe. And Karen kills Reggie by making him give us his best impression of an anchor. The thing that pisses me off most is, despite what ending you're geared towards, again, the dialogue makes Delsin sound like a paragon of justice, with Reggie's final words being, "I'm so proud of you," before falling and dying. Then Delsin storms Karen's other secret base with the help of everyone except Hank, who you either strangle and kill or call a bitch. And you either kill Karen or show her concrete coffin to the news and go, "I am the bestest good boy." And the sheer fucking audacity of the evil ending, though, is you not only kill Karen, and then you go to the prison and get everyone in there's powers. But after all the work you did, it's rendered pointless as Delsin gets home and the tribe tells him to eat shit for being such a criminal dickhead. And he uses his powers to nuke the reservation in a fit of anger. Fuck you, Delsin, you immature heel. After a whole game of bad decisions on either side, you're given such a big middle finger for being evil, when it really is in Delsin's nature, karmic alignment aside. Not only that, but Delsin gives up on being a minor offense criminal at the end of the good path by painting a mural for Reggie, and we get a bow on this box of garbage. Second Son also had a pre-order mission where you got Cole's jacket and heard about him from Zeke, but fuck me, I didn't have a PS4 at the time this game came out, so I'll be fucked if I do that mess. I wouldn't even want to, cause it'd validate this game's relation to the other Infamous games. Fuck Second Son and all that it tried to imitate from Infamous 1 and 2. Except the Dead Sarah cover of heart-shaped box in the end credits is good. That's the only proper credit I can give. Also, where the fuck is Pike's Place Market in your Seattle, Second Son, you hack frauds?
Oh no, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue.